Vacation plans, long commute, weekend at the cabin. Wherever you end up this summer, the Connector Idaho Daily News helps keep you connected to Idaho, even while you're away. Get the top local stories every weekday morning in just a few minutes. That's the Connector Idaho Daily News. Listen on your podcast app.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Caudette. This is Idaho Matters. Over the weekend, two tragedies unfolded in Idaho and Washington. A huge wildfire exploded over tens of thousands of acres, and it raced towards Spokane, overwhelming firefighters and surprising residents who had to flee for their lives. At this point, more than 700 homes and buildings have burned. Another fire forced residents to flee in Weiser just Sunday as the Tartar Fire raced toward the city. And then in Twin Falls, a man opened fire at an In-N-Out burger restaurant, killing 3 people and injuring 7. That happened on Saturday. Our Boise State Public Radio's James Dawson has been covering this story from the beginning, and he's joining us now to talk more about this. Jimmy, we do appreciate all the work you've done over the weekend to keep everyone up to date on this. So thanks for joining us today as well.
Sure thing, Gemma.
So, Jimmy, let's go back to the very beginning. Talk to us about where this happened.
Yeah, so this happened at the In-N-Out Burger on Blue Lakes Boulevard. It's just after you cross the Snake River as you're heading into town. So for anyone who hasn't been to Twin Falls, this is the main commercial area. We're talking about you've got the mall, a bunch of strip malls, Costco, all kinds of stores and restaurants just after the Perrin Bridge and the city's visitor center. So basically, just about anyone who's driving into Twin Falls from the interstate is going to pass through this spot, which makes sense as to why the police chief said that his agency was conducting interviews with hundreds of potential witnesses.
So, Jimmy, what we know is that a man opened fire outside the restaurant. Can you walk us through what police have told people so far about what happened?
Yeah, I mean, details are pretty scarce at this point, almost 2 full days after the shooting happened. The timeline that we do know is that police have told us that 24-year-old Chad Williams began shooting around 2:30 Saturday afternoon. And then we've seen some videos posted to social media showing an armed man walking around the restaurant's drive-through, eventually firing multiple times through a windshield of a nearby Tesla that appeared to be at the visitor center that's just a little bit north of the restaurant. But that's about all we have.
Okay, so Jimmy, as I mentioned, so tragic. Unfortunately, we know that 3 people were killed. I believe 7 people injured. Do we know anything about any of these victims at this point? I mean, yes, it's been 2 days, but it's still so early in this investigation.
Right. Yeah. So we don't know anything officially. And you got the numbers right, at least as of Sunday afternoon. 3 people killed. That's not counting the shooter. So 3 victims shot and killed, 7 injured. Chad Williams also died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And the latest info that we have, at least health-wise from officials, is that 2 of the 7 injured, were treated and released from the hospital. 3 were in stable condition as of that time, and then 2 were in critical condition. Again, that update was from yesterday afternoon, hoping to get some more updates from Twin Falls Police today, hopefully.
So, Jimmy, as you mentioned, there is video floating all over online. And you mentioned a handful of those videos, but one of the videos includes someone seems to be shooting back at the shooter. And I believe I've read that police have mentioned what I believe an off-duty police officer, but then a civilian, correct? What do we know about the people who returned fire, and what have police said about this?
Yeah, so the Idaho Statesman, we kind of saw a name circulating around the internet a lot on Saturday night, and the Idaho Statesman identified that civilian as Jordan Salinas from Kimberly. He's a 35-year-old man. I definitely encourage everyone to go read Mark D's reporting there. So, he told the Idaho Statesman, Salinas, that is, he had planned to go horseback riding in Hagerman with his girlfriend that day. Stopped for lunch at In-N-Out shortly before the shooting. And that's when, he told the Statesman he's been seriously training with firearms ever since the 2021 shooting at the Boise Town Square Mall. He's a caregiver for his brother who uses a wheelchair, and he felt like, shooters generally target vulnerable people, potentially like his brother. And so that was kind of the motivation behind that. As you mentioned, Salinas wasn't the only person returning fire, though. You had this off-duty state trooper who was also on the scene. And Salinas said that they pushed the shooter back toward the visitor center. Law enforcement called the two people heroes and said that they likely saved lives by distracting Williams. And I should say earlier, we don't know the full name of one of the victims, but we did see that In-N-Out posted a statement Saturday night saying that one of the associates that was working at the location was one of the dead. You had In-N-Out president Lindsay Snyder say, quote, "She was taking care of our most important asset, our customers, and her life was taken by a disgusting human who doesn't value the lives of others or his own," end quote. We do have other media outlets who've identified the victims, seen some GoFundMes, but we haven't been able to confirm those identities ourselves.
So, Jimmy, there is still so much to unpack here. So can you talk to us about what's next? First, in terms of what the police are doing, or are they asking of the public? But also, Jimmy, I mean, this was a brand new restaurant. There were, as we all know, when these In-N-Outs
a week
opened,
old.
Right. I mean, and they're inundated with people. And it's in one of the busiest areas of Twin Falls, as you said. So hundreds of people. It is disturbing to watch the videos. I cannot fathom what people are dealing with having witnessed this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, the shooter's background and potential motivation are still under investigation. I saw that KMVT, the local news station in Twin Falls, confirmed with the College of Southern Idaho he attended classes there from 2022 to 2023. Didn't graduate with any credentials. Police had been in contact with his parents who were cooperating, and obviously heartsick for the victims and the whole situation too. We've got those hundreds of potential witnesses that are going to have to be interviewed, according to police. You had dozens of crisis counselors. I think I saw the number 50 therapists who got together on Sunday, offered free sessions for anyone who was affected by the shooting. Whether you were there in person or, you had a family member or a friend or acquaintance, whomever, you could go and talk to someone about that. And they're doing the same today. It's at Rock Creek Elementary until 8 p.m. Police have said that they're hopefully going to extend those counseling services further into the week as well, just to hopefully help the community heal just a little bit as the wound is still fresh. Not trying to make a pun or anything there. Police are also asking the public, like you said, to contact them with any information they might have about the shooting. We're talking pictures, video, whatever you might have had on your phone or just saw in general. There's a tip line website where they've partnered with the FBI out of Salt Lake City about. That web address is fbi.gov/Twin Falls shooting, all one word. Again, fbi.gov/Twin Falls shooting, one word. You can upload things there. You can just give out any sort of information that you might have and really help law enforcement try to piece together this puzzle, especially as, they're partnering with, surrounding law enforcement agencies, like I said, the FBI. So they're really marshaling all the resources they can get together to try to figure this one out.
James, really appreciate all of the reporting you've done on this, and thanks for taking time for us, and I know you'll keep us updated. We want to turn now to the other big news that happened over the weekend. Wildfires are threatening communities around the West. including a trio of fires that closed in on Spokane, Washington over the weekend. It overwhelmed firefighters and it forced residents to literally flee for their lives. At this point, more than 700 homes and buildings have burned. Here with an update are Doug Nadvornik, news director at Spokane Public Radio, and Anna King, senior correspondent for Northwest Public Broadcasting. And they've been reporting on this situation in Spokane all weekend. I know how busy the two of you are. Thank you for making time for us today. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for asking.
Thanks for having us.
So, Anna, let me begin with you. Can you talk to us about these fires? Because as I mentioned, there are several in this area. So what do you know at this point?
Yeah, there's three major fires in the northwest and northeast of Spokane, and more than 7,000 acres have burned already. These fires are being driven by winds, although the winds more recently have calmed down. But on Sunday, they took a real run.
So, Anna, for folks who might not be super familiar with Spokane, I mean, maybe they only know kind of like where the airport is, where the downtown area is. Where exactly are these fires?
So let me jump in here because I was
Okay.
the one who on Saturday afternoon about 1:30, I was working in my backyard when I suddenly look up to the northwest and I see this big plume of smoke. The fire started somewhere around Riverside State Park, which is to the northwest of Spokane, and it quickly moved. It was blown by winds coming from the southwest. It got blown to the northeast, and it blew past over the Spokane River. And on the other side of the Spokane River is essentially the hillsides that lead to subdivisions. And so it started blowing into subdivisions, which is when, things really got serious. And it was a matter of an hour or two before we found out that there were level 2 and level 3 evacuations. And these evacuations were not just for these suburban areas, but they were also for within the northern boundary of Spokane. We're talking about the northwest corner of Spokane. There are areas that kind of the rural urban interface that I'm sure Boise is dealing with right now too.
Mm-hmm.
So it blew into a neighborhood called the Indian Trail neighborhood where a lot of those houses burned. The problem with the Indian Trail neighborhood is it's beautiful, but there's a 2-lane road in and a 2-lane road out. And so people were heeding the level 3 evacuation warnings and they were trying to get out. The problem is that a 5-minute trip to get out of your neighborhood turned into a 2-hour trip because you've literally got tens of thousands of people trying to get out using this 2-lane road at the north end of Spokane. What is miraculous about all of this is that we don't know of anybody who was hurt or killed, even though there were tens of thousands of people getting in their car and trying to, pack up their belongings and get the hell out of town. So that's where it started. The winds have died down a little bit, but this fire is now this fire, the first one that was started, has sort of been controlled. It's not fully contained or anything like that, but the real fire now is another one that burned started kind of to the northwest of that, and it's being burned kind of at the north end of Spokane toward a major state highway, Highway 395 that runs north of Spokane into a suburban area out of Spokane. So those are the two big fires that are burning right now. And there's a third one that's kind of northeast of Spokane that has somewhat been controlled. It's a much smaller fire. So that's where we sit right now.
Okay, and this is Samantha Wright, senior producer, Idaho Matters. And I'm sorry, Doug, I have to jump in here. Did you say you were in your backyard and then you look behind you and there was the fire and all of a sudden that's how you knew it was coming at you?
No, I didn't see the fire, but I saw the plume of smoke. And so I got in my car and drove 3 blocks and to a boulevard that overlooks a big gorge. There's the Spokane River Gorge kind of runs in the west end of Spokane. And you could see on the other end of the gorge, this smoke was just literally billowing at the top of the ridge on the other side. And it took maybe an hour or so before it had burned to the north, and then it burned across it jumped the Spokane River, blown by embers that were 30 to 50 miles per hour winds were blowing embers to the other side of the river.
Wow. Okay, that's incredible. So can we get an update? Do we know how many people got evacuated? How many homes were burned? Let's figure that out first.
So we know of 60,000 people who are subject to evacuation orders. Now, I would say that maybe a good part of those are at the bottom end of what I think was probably an evacuation order that was say overly pessimistic in that that our local officials were worried that if it burned into the city of Spokane, we were going to have a real problem. So they made their evacuation, I think, probably bigger than they needed to make it. So 60,000 people were subject to evacuation orders, probably several thousand left. And the official number is more than 600 burned. We don't know how many are homes. We don't know how many are outbuildings.
There's a lot of people in town that are in hotels or staying with family members or staying with friends. The hotel I'm staying in is just booked up with families and people, young families that are fleeing these fires. I talked to a seventh grader this morning over breakfast, and she said, "Yeah, my parents think our house is still there." Little blonde girl in seventh grade, and just kind of shell shocked. It's quite a maneuver to evacuate this many people.
The Red Cross initially opened an evacuation shelter in a small gym at Spokane Falls Community College, which is right there in that neighborhood. And they quickly, within a couple of hours, one, they lost power. But two, they also found out that it was woefully small for what they needed. So our city officials created a shelter that's in our convention center, which is right in the heart of downtown. And that is where the major evacuation center is right now.
And
Anna,
that,
oh, sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, and that place is just chock-a-block full of cots and people, immense amounts of elderly people who are coming out of resident homes or assisted living facilities and can't be transferred to a hospital because they need that constant care from their nursing staff. And so they're just laid out on these cots, and there's people with oxygen masks and very elderly people who are confused, wailing, or crying out at certain intervals because they don't know what's going on and they're confused. It was a real scene yesterday, and just their care staff trying to change them behind blankets, and things. It was just really heart-rending to kind of see all those people in trouble yesterday.
Wow. Anna, I think you're really getting into the human part of all of this. We heard a lot of numbers and we've seen a lot of pictures, but you've been talking to people on the ground. You've been seeing a lot of this right up close.
Yeah, I was in one of those neighborhoods that Doug was describing yesterday, north of Spokane, and I was kind of at this checkpoint where the cops had the streets closed down, and there was emergency crews and natural gas workers going in and out, trying to shut off the gas lines, people trying to shut off the irrigation water that was spraying up out of ash-strewn grounds that used to be houses. It was really an incredible scene. It was just apocalyptic. And when I was up in these neighborhoods, the streets are all clean and there. The sidewalks are all intact, but then just ashes in piles of these houses with just brick chimneys standing up out of them. And there's weird stuff on the ground that's still there, like untouched bird baths,
Oh,
things that, concrete bird baths that are just standing in the front yard with nothing around it but ashes, statuettes of the Virgin Mary, concrete statues just standing there surrounded by ashes. We saw a radio flyer, a little wagon that was burnt up and in some ashes. And as you know, the radio flyer wagon is a real icon of Spokane, with their downtown riverfront park. It's one of the
Giant
major,
red wagon, a
yeah,
piece of art. Yeah.
is a major symbol of Spokane. And it was just really emblematic, just burnt up American flags, just frayed at the edges and burnt. It was just really hard. People that I met there in that neighborhood are just looking tired and exhausted and in shock and so sad. I met one woman who I just thought had an amazing story. Her name was Britt Wilson, and she's 35 and from Spokane. She was standing outside of her parents' home where they had watched a movie on Thursday night. And then this just days later, she's standing in front of a pile of ashes. Their home was taken in the old trail fire, and it was just completely gone. And she was just in shock, standing there in a tank top and some sandals, and just looking at the ashes of what their family all loved. And she said her family had lived there for more than 10 years, and it was just a tragedy. And she just was kind of on the edge of tears, but also just in disbelief that it was all gone.
Wow. We're speaking with Doug Nadvornik, news director at Spokane Public Radio, and Anna King, senior correspondent for Northwest Public Broadcasting, about a trio of wildfires that have burned more than 600 homes and buildings in Spokane, Washington over the weekend. So what are officials saying about the fire and what happened? I think I heard Washington's governor declared a statewide wildfire emergency.
Well, I think this is emblematic of where Washington is right now. Governor Ferguson yesterday, our state lands commissioner, Dave Upthegrove, was talking about how there are 15 major wildfires burning right now in Washington. We really had not had a big wildfire season in 3, 4, 5 years, and this one wasn't looking to be a real big one either, but everything kind of came together with the wind, the heat, and all the things that it just made it kind of like a Southern California type fire. As Anna was talking about, I was thinking Altadena and the pictures we'd see on the network news about all these, manicured streets and no houses because they were all burned. So anyway, our governor is talking about how we're hoping that FEMA will jump in real quick and help start the process of helping us to get the fires out, but also helping maybe somewhere in the next several months to start the rebuilding process. A few years ago, Spokane had two major fires, one east of town and one west of town, and they were burning at the same time, the Oregon Road and Gray fires, in which a lot of neighborhoods got burned like this. So it's been 3 or 4 years since we've experienced this, and I fear that this is going to be almost a regular thing anymore. And it's not just Spokane, but a lot of communities, I think, are going to have to deal with this.
Wow.
As our vegetation goes into drought, we have a statewide drought declaration this year. And as that drought deepens, the trees get stressed and the vegetation gets stressed and the grasses dry out like kindling. And so when you have all that come together and then you put high winds on that and a spark start, it's just a recipe for disaster here.
I will say one thing is that our local utility, Avista, has been very aggressive at the last couple of summers in telling people that we're going to shut your power off if you're in a situation where it looks like a fire might start and a fire might burn. They call it their public safety program. And in this case, about 7,000 people had their power cut off Saturday afternoon as the fires were starting because they didn't want to make it worse. And so Heather Rosentrader, who's the CEO of Avista, yesterday at a press conference talked about how we think that really helped to keep this from getting much bigger than it could have been. And so I think a lot of utilities, one, it's a liability concern, but it's also a way for them to say, it allows us to go and check. If we turn the power off, it's a way for us to go safely check our power lines and stuff to find out, in a case like this, do we have trees that have blown across power lines, or are there fire situations? And she said, we found that there were some situations where we were able to go in and fix this without having to worry about live power lines. So that's another part of this story.
I know Idaho Power here in the Treasure Valley area and elsewhere has started doing that as well. I think that's just going to be the new normal. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about people. We talked a little bit about how many were evacuated. What about animals and livestock? I know the first thought is to get humans and property, but this is, there's a lot of horses. There's a lot of, where do they go?
So within an hour or two, Spokane County opened our fairgrounds. which is a pretty big place. And they said, okay, we've got an RV lot. If you need to come and bring your RV and pull your horse trailers and that sort of thing, we got a place where you can park your stuff, park your animals. You can bring your smaller animals, that sort of thing. So that's where right now the folks can go in Spokane. What's interesting about it is that we've got about 2,000 firefighters who are coming into our town from places, 12 different states, I think is what somebody said yesterday. So they're going to be sharing the fairgrounds. You're going to have horses and RVs at one end of the fairgrounds, and you're going to have tents with 2,000 firefighters in another part of the fairgrounds. So that's what it looks like right now.
Okay, so what's next for the people who've lost everything? I mean, at least 600 homes and buildings are gone. What happens now?
I think a lot of it is that they're going to have to sort out like where are they staying for the short term? Where are they going to stay for the long term? Are they going to rent a place? Are they going to get insurance money? Working through the insurance process, are they going to rebuild or are they going to sell their land? This is a matrix that is very, very difficult and is very disruptive to people's lives. One friend of mine in the Tri-Cities who lost their home, it took them about 2 full years of building, reconstruction, buying dishes, buying measuring cups for their kitchen to kind of put their lives back together after they lost their home. So I think these folks have a long road of recovery that's going to be exhausting to just get back to normal.
I made the reference a few minutes ago to the two fires that burned here a few years ago. I know there are people who are in those neighborhoods who still have not rebuilt. One, it may be that they can't afford it, they didn't have enough insurance. Two or three, it could be that they just haven't decided whether or not it is worth it to continue because we may be in this same situation in 3 or 4 years. I build a new home and a fire comes out and takes that out too. So you have a lot of people making those decisions about, we love being here, but if it's like this, I'm not sure that we can afford to be here.
And also, I'll just say I come from a contracting family. Most of my family is in general contractors, and there's just only so many builders out there, and we're already experiencing a nationwide housing shortage. So then you put on top of that that you have all of these homes that have been lost that would need to be replaced, and it might not even be feasible. You might have a builder, but that builder might tell you you're 2 years out now.
And construction crews are, there's a demand for construction workers. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't all flow smoothly.
Well, in the best of times, it doesn't. And I would think now with all the chaos, I'm struck from what I'm hearing from the both of you, very, very emotional, not just about who you're talking to and what you're seeing, but, this is your backyard.
Well, I mean, it's our backyard, but anybody who loses their home and it has seen the pictures on TV of people in other places, it now hits you home. Where am I going to stay tonight? Where do I have family here? I don't have any family here. Just all the day-to-day stuff. And as Anna says, how can I rebuild the life that I knew? I'm going to have a new life. And so, yeah, plus I will say it is bringing out the best. Spokane, I think, has been a pretty good city in terms of if something happens, people rally. And Spokane is pretty good about that. But I think we're just starting to figure out the scale of this fire. And are there enough churches and nonprofits to be able to help this? Or are we going to have to go out and find someplace, a sugar daddy someplace to help us figure out how to, take care of a number, 600 homes. I mean, who's going to rebuild all those? So
standing with that woman, Britt Wilson, that I was talking about earlier, she said it's like a movie, but it's happening to me and my family. And it was just really a powerful moment where she was just like, it's just surreal. It doesn't seem like it can be real, but it is real. And, there's young families involved here. I spoke to a woman named Alicia Davison, who's 29. She's newly pregnant, and they were trying to build their home, trying to build their nest for their growing family. And she lost her fish. She had 20 fish that got burnt up, her family jewelry, her wedding dress from just a year ago. And so these are real emotional losses that people are undergoing, and they're doing it with such grace to be able to still talk to me or to be able to be kind, even amidst this trauma, is really remarkable.
And I would say even the people who weren't affected didn't have their houses burned. I mean, my family, I live 3 blocks away from the edge of one of the evacuation areas. But I was thinking, my wife, as I was here working on Saturday afternoon, my wife was trying to figure out, okay, where is all of our money? Where is our safe? Where's all this stuff? And she was putting it all in the back, the back of her car to bring it here to the radio station. Even those people who have never had to think about, what would I take if I had to leave? We're confronted with that, oh crap, what do I take now? Do I take all my pictures? Do I take my money? What leaves? So it's not just the people who lost their homes too. It was the people who had to go through the trauma of just having to leave their homes.
And I can just say that, like, the people I've met after these types of fires, it's so important that you get yourself and your pets out, that you take it seriously enough to grab your keys, grab your purse, your medications, and your pets and get out. Yep. There's nothing worth burning up for.
Wow. All right. I want to thank both of you I know you've been busy. You've been busy all weekend, and thanks for giving us a few minutes to give us an update. This is really important.
Well, thanks for asking us.
Thanks for having us.
We've been speaking with Doug Nadvornik, news director at Spokane Public Radio, and Anna King, senior correspondent for Northwest Public Broadcasting, about a trio of wildfires that burned more than 600 homes and buildings in Spokane, Washington over the weekend.
You've been listening to the Idaho Matters podcast from Boise State Public Radio. To stay in touch, you can find quick Idaho Daily News every morning when you subscribe to the Connector podcast. If you're really enjoying this show, a quick rating or review on Apple or Spotify really helps other folks discover us, and we'd appreciate it.
The fatal shooting of a teenager at a protest in Seattle has gone unsolved for 6 years.
This is open in your face. How are there no answers?
Our investigation has uncovered new evidence and witnesses who say they've never talked to police.
Did police ever call you?
Not once.
Listen to We Keep Us Safe, a new true crime series on the Embedded podcast from NPR.